So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Juan, is like you were like one of the trailblazers in so many ways. Like you went and carved this incredible path for yourself. You eventually come out as homosexual, and it sounded like that was a difficult process because your family was quite conservative. Now
Hmm.
you're married, have a beautiful family, 11-year-old twins, and then you were a writer on Roseanne, and like they had this issue where obviously like Roseanne ended up having some terrible statements that came out on Twitter, and then I believe you left that show. But on the same time, like I see your comedy, and your comedy is so real. Like your comedy is like no punches being pulled. Like Wanda Sykes is like, just like telling it like it is, be real. And there's so many comedians from your era that uh, have issues with the fact that it seems like the goalposts keep moving for comedy, or the goalposts keep moving for art generally. Where like if artists were to talk about certain things X years ago, we'd all be like, yeah, that's fine. But now it seems like the rules have shifted. And you again are like one of the original trailblazers of the era. You've seen and done it all. Like, do you have a take on whether cancel culture is like uh, like at the right place, a little bit overboard, still more work to be done?
Ugh. You know, I go back and forth on that. To me, it's up to the audience. The audience gets to decide who's canceled and who's not. I mean, we can all say, "Hey, that's wrong. This person should go away or be canceled." But if that person, says, "Hey, I'm doing a show," and the audience shows up and buys tickets to see that person, then who are we to say, you're wrong, that you're not allowed to, to support, or this is the comic that you like. No, we're not going to allow this to happen. If that person is not for you, then fine. Then don't go see them. Don't go support them. But yeah, I'm not for somebody does one thing wrong and then we banish them.
Well, particularly in comedy, and just as a human being too, and as a presidential candidate, I can share this.
Hmm.
Uh, you stick a mic in my face often enough, like eventually I'll say something really stupid.
Of course.
That's just humanity.
That's
Like,
absolutely.
and as a candidate, like that, there was very much that dynamic where people, it almost seems like they're trying to get you to say something problematic so that they can be like, see, look at this person and look at this statement. And so that they'll like ask you questions that you could tell are meant to try and like get a rise out of you or somewhat like contentious. And then like as a candidate, you had to essentially just check any kind of humanity at the door in terms of like an emotional response. Because if you react emotionally, then it's like, oh, like then like we got him because he reacted harshly when we like subtly insinuated that he was, like a racist or a terrible person or whatever the insinuation was. And so I understood at least that part of it as a candidate. It's
Hmm.
like okay, I get it, but like if you catch anyone on film and like their worst moments, like we'd all look freaking terrible, like just as human beings. And so then if you say it's like, look, I have this moment of this person saying something regrettable, so let's try and expunge their existence from, like the culture or from social media or whatnot. I mean, what you said initially to me was like the way it used to be, which is like, hey, I don't like your art, I don't like your comedy, so I will not watch or consume it, and I will just turn this way.
Does that make sense? I mean,
That made sense to me. And
yeah.
then, but then now there's like a new thing. It's like I don't like what you're saying, and now I will somehow condemn you. I will somehow try and tell others that like if you're associated with this person, there's another part of it too that like that there's like this strange supposed to be like transferal of attitudes or beliefs. Like if you said something that I disagreed with and I sat and had this conversation with you, then I'm also actually in the wrong because like I'm going to somehow be either getting your attitudes and beliefs from you or somehow like helping you transfer them to to others. And it's like, can't people just have a conversation and like not like imagine that I agree with everything that the other person is saying? I mean, happens in real life all the time. Like, I talk to my neighbor. My neighbor thinks all sorts of stuff that I'm probably not a fan of, but it's like, like we can
Right.
still talk over the fence and, like no problems were had. So I'm with you on that level. It's like the negation of your own consumption, like a-okay, but then like the negation of anyone's consumption, it's like, come on, people should be able to see what they want to see.
Right.
I mean, in your case, it's more complicated too, for the fact that you actually know a lot of people as human beings, and there's like a natural temptation. If you know someone as a human being, you'd be like, oh, like I know that person. That's like a human being. Sometimes you know the human being, you're like, oh, that person is an asshole.
Yeah,
like what is going
finally
on?
got him. Yeah. I'm like, finally.
Yeah, and then other times you'd be like, that person's actually okay, and that was just some really dumb thing. I wish we had a finer way to distinguish between those two situations.
You can see it. You can see the where people don't come to their defense. And like,
Really,
yeah,
really, is that the way it is?
Yeah, everybody's like, okay, finally got him. But when people come out and say like, hey, come on, that guy's not like that. Oh, come on, this person is a good person. Da, 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 da. Then it's like, okay, come on, somebody just made a slip. It's cool. Leave them alone. Yeah.
Well, that's encouraging, Wanda. We should definitely take a beat and look around and be like, can anyone come to this person's defense and rescue?
Right.
Because if so, like I'll just like wait a day to like decide what I think. That could be like at least an improvement over the current process. I mean, in an ideal world, and this happens to me too. In an ideal world, you'd actually like, this is not realistic, but this is the ideal. You'd actually just be able to call a person up and be like, hey, so what's up? Like, what was that about? And then you'd like hear what the backstory was. Of course, we never have that opportunities, and a lot of the time someone's career is on the line, so then they'll end up having like a very like rehearsed, crafted statement and the rest of it, which in some ways is really unfortunate, because you kind of just want someone to be like, all right, like, this was the deal.
Yeah, exactly. And the ones that are so well crafted, they feel so fake, and the person is just saying it to try to save their career, and then you're like, nah, this is not going to do it. But I would rather for somebody to say something, if they say something, stupid or whatever, racist, whatever, and they get called out on it, for them to go, wait a minute, what was wrong with what I said? I'd rather for them to start at that point, like, what was wrong with it? So at least now people are saying, well, because it's this, and they go, oh man, well, I didn't think that, but okay, I can see it that way. Okay, my bad, man. I'm sorry. I won't. At least you see that there's some growth there. They're learning something, but don't apologize if you don't know what you're apologizing for.
There are parallels to politics again with this, because you see also like the very, very polished statements where like, someone misspeaks or there's a gaffe, and then it's like, oh, like I'm really, really sorry, and like here are like the things. I mean, this happened to me on the trail too, where like I was accused of doing something, and then these consultants on my campaign team were like, all right, you need to apologize for this immediately. And I was like, does anyone want to ask me whether this actually happened, or whether like this is a real thing? You want to check on that? And then after they checked, eventually, so when I said that, they were like, is this real? And I was like, it is not real. And apologizing for it is like the opposite of what we should do, because it happens to be completely untrue. And like, I got the sense too that the consultants just assumed it was true, because probably they've been around other situations where it was true. was probably it. But also like, that's like their knee jerk reaction, because they're like trying to protect the, they're trying to protect like the institution or the franchise, like in this case, it was like, hey, I was a candidate, I'd raised millions of dollars. They're getting paid by me. And I didn't have that many consultants, because I really disliked consultants. But we had a couple for media stuff and some other things. And so when they came out with this guidance, like they're just trying to protect the franchise. and meanwhile, they didn't even check with a human being to be like, hey, like, what's going on? If we could somehow humanize these communications and do what you just suggested, where the person's like, what's wrong with what I said? Like, can someone explain to me like where I went wrong? And then, have like a little bit more of like a human education process, because like there's like a real, there's like faux shame. You can sense it in some of these communications, and it's preceded by this faux outrage, where it's like, are people that like actually like upset by what this person said? Like half the time it's shit that someone says around you casually, like, but they're not a public figure, obviously. It's just some knucklehead, like, or whatnot, like says it around you, and like you don't go around like, um, like berating like your freaking like uncle or grandfather or whatever it
Right.
happens to be, and so that like there's this like, so there's like a faux outrage, and it like rises up, and then it's followed by like this faux penance or faux shame, and it's like, I will think, I will reflect, I will retreat into my cave, I will do the stuff. It's like, we need to like tamp both of those reactions down ideally.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The fake anger, that just bugs me. It's just the worst, because it's like, I know you don't give a shit about this, but you just feel like this is how you're the right way I should react. But really, what's so ridiculous about all of this is that Trump has said some of the
craziest shit ever.
The most offensive shit ever. I mean, grab him by the pussy. I mean, if you start there, and he still became president. So it seems like everybody should get at least 3. We should all get like just 3. You can say whatever crazy shit you want to say 3 times, and nobody can mess with you.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.